At a work event, my boss grabbed my waist too comfortably. My husband lost it. That saying, "you can't have your cake and eat it," is true. Too true, in fact. I had always believed that I could have my cake and eat it, until now, when life has given me the biggest test, one that I've managed to fail woefully. My name is Elizabeth. I'm 28 years old, and I've been married for 3 years now, to an amazing man, Sam. He's very amazing, and I remember just how proud of myself I was for marrying him. But I ended up ruining things, badly beyond repair. My husband, he lost it. At a work event I invited him to. My boss, he grabbed my waist too comfortably, like it was something he was already used to. And Sam just got so upset and managed to destroy everything in seconds. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have let Dan grab me that way, especially knowing Sam was around. I should have kept my distance, stayed with my husband throughout the event. But Dan just kept trying to introduce me to different people, and also discuss business with them. The event was filled with lots of investors, both existing ones and the ones we were hoping to attract to their interest. So I had the duty as his assistant to be by his side, but it didn't mean I should have let him grab me that way, not in front of Sam, or anyone. But the truth is, Dan was used to it. We didn't share just a boss and an employee's relationship. Our relationship went even further than that. I started working for Dan many years ago. I worked at a convenience store for about 2 years after graduation from high school. My parents didn't have enough money to pay for college, so I had to work to save up for it, and I applied for scholarships, but I couldn't get in. But not because I wasn't smart enough. Dan was a regular customer at the store where I worked. He always came around to pick up stuff for his wife and kids, and he liked me because of how I always attended to me. For the 2 years I worked at that store, whenever he came around, he would always pick something extra for me and pay for it, or sometimes give me tips, which was prohibited. But he still did it anyway. Dan and I got pretty close, and we would talk while he shopped, or pretended to, so we could have our usual conversations. He told me about his wife and kids. It was then I found out that I was the same age as his second child, and slightly older than his third. Yes, Dan is much older than me, almost the same age as my father. I guess that was the reason I got so comfortable with him. I took him as an uncle or godfather I never had. But then I eventually got fired from the store I worked for. My boss found out about the secret tips I got from customers. I don't know why. But the first person I called after getting fired was Dan. He came almost immediately, and he picked me up. It was my first time in his car. I remember how he drove me to a cafe and bought me snacks and a drink. Then he asked me if I wanted to come work for him. I was more than excited to do so. I knew then that Dan owned a huge company, and at first I thought he meant working as a cleaner, or maybe a housekeeper or something unofficial, something that didn't require a degree. I was shocked when Dan told me that I would be working as his personal assistant, and he offered me a huge salary. I was so happy. I mean, who wouldn't be? I was very grateful to Dan, and I worked so hard when I started working for him. I wanted to impress him, show him that I didn't have to be a college student to do what they do. I worked for Dan for over 8 years. It was while working for him I got my college degree. I studied part-time and also worked. Dan paid for everything. He made sure that I lived really well. When business was booming so well and we had to expand, we moved to a completely different city to start up another branch. It was Dan who got me the apartment I lived in before I married Sam. I was just too grateful to him, and I took him as a father. Even my parents knew Dan. He would visit them many times, and each time with gifts. He told them it was because he loves me like a daughter, and he didn't have one, so I became one to him. He would proudly introduce me to anyone we came across, as his official assistant and his goddaughter, although his family didn't like me very much, and they didn't pretend to. When I first started working for Dan, he started involving me in their family dinners. After work, we would drive down to his place and eat with his family. But it was uncomfortable. His family made it clear they didn't want me around. Well, his kids mostly ignored me, but his wife made it clear that I would never be her daughter. So I stopped going to his place to eat, and then eventually we moved to develop the new branch, and I started to relax. No family to stress me about spending too much time with Dan. But that was when the problem started. After we moved cities, Dan started acting really strange around me. He would buy me expensive gifts, a different type this time. Usually back home, the gifts he bought were usually work clothes, shoes, and even perfumes. But the gifts started changing. At first, it started with jewelries. One Dan would insist I wore to work, even though it was highly unprofessional. But to satisfy him, I would wear them. Then Dan started to get me underwear. It was first some sexy panties that I never would wear. Then he would buy me lingeries and heels. One time he got me this cat outfit. Those ones that were used in role plays during sexual activities. I tried to ignore his behavior, but then Dan started to behave really possessively. Anytime we went to a meeting and a guy or even a client behaved like they were interested in me, Dan would make sure we didn't do business with them, even if it costs us to lose lots of money. Anytime I told him I maybe had a date or something with guys and not my friends, Dan ensured my workload became too much to even consider stepping out. It went on like that for a year. And the crazy thing? I liked it. I liked how he behaved jealous around me, how he would watch me work while I was with him. I liked how he tried to hide his reaction to me whenever I came close. It fascinated me. The truth is, back home, I had always been jealous seeing Dan around his wife. He gave her so much attention, and he was always touching and kissing her like he couldn't get enough of her. I always imagined me being in her position, and I guess she sensed that. Maybe it was the reason she never really liked me. So when Dan started to really pay attention to me, in the same way as his wife, I was really pleased. I even started to dress in clothes that didn't conceal so much, just to push him even further. Until that one night when our relationship finally changed. We had a meeting with a client, one we had to travel a little distance for, and by the time we were done with the meeting, it was late. I suggested we crash at a hotel and then leave the next morning, and Dan had agreed. But then a stupid idea formed in my head. Instead of booking 2 separate rooms, I booked just one, knowing fully well that the hotel only accepted bookings made hours earlier. When we got to the hotel, I had no choice but to stay in the same room as Dan. I had to remove my clothes, which were wet and sticky, and coincidentally, I was wearing one of the sexy lingerie Dan had bought me. It was the push that Dan needed, because that night, we had sex countless times. It was how our affair started. From that night at the hotel, Dan and I started spending even more time together. We barely got any work done, because we spent more time in his bedroom or mine than working. Sometimes the office space wasn't spared from our sins. I was insatiable, and Dan loved pleasing me. So our relationship worked well enough. I even got my tubes tied just to maintain it. I didn't want to have any baby, especially not for Dan. As much as I enjoyed our relationship, I wasn't in love with him. I just liked the sex and the gifts that came after. Until I met Sam, my friends were worried that I spent a lot of time working. They set me up on a blind date with him. I really didn't want to go at first. I knew that Dan would get upset if he knew about it. So I lied that I was spending time with my friends instead. And I went on this date. Surprisingly, it was fun. Sam was kind, funny, and even sweet. I found myself wanting more after that date, so when he asked for a second date, I was more than eager to go. I went on 3 different dates with Sam before we started dating officially, none of which Dan knew. I usually had a lie ready in place whenever he asked any questions. I knew that if he knew about Sam, he would try to destroy things between us. And I was already in love with Sam. So I kept our relationship hidden for about a year, and I successfully did so somehow. But it wasn't particularly easy hiding both men from each other. I even took Sam to visit my parents when he asked. Behind Dan's back, I begged my parents not to tell him. I lied to them that I hadn't introduced Sam to him yet, and I didn't want him to feel somehow that I already brought him home without letting him know. I told Sam that Dan was my godfather, and he had always taken care of me. It was to explain why I spent an awful lot of time with him and work. Things went on really well, until Sam asked me to marry him. It was on my birthday, one that I had lied to Dan that I was spending with my friends, but I was having dinner with Sam instead, and then he went down on one knee and popped the question. Of course I said yes. I truly love Sam, and I really could imagine spending my life with him. Our relationship was different, something special. It wasn't like the hide-and-seek games I was playing with Dan, and Sam treated me really well. I wasn't a mistress that needed to be hidden, But then came the worst part, telling Dan. Dan was livid when I finally told him the truth, and included the part that I was getting married. He kept calling me selfish and greedy. I thought I gave you everything. Anything you've asked for, or is there anything else? For a whole week, Dan didn't say anything to me, even when I tried apologizing, even when I told him that we couldn't do what we did forever. He still ignored me completely. I honestly thought I would lose my job at first, but Dan decided to travel to spend time with his family. He left everything to me to handle, and he spent almost 2 months away. By then, I was safely married. He didn't show up for my wedding, even though I sent him the wedding invitation and begged him to show up. When Sam asked why my godfather wasn't at our wedding, I lied that he couldn't leave work, but he sent his congratulations and a gift card. My parents also asked the same thing, and I gave them the same answer. When Dan finally came back, it was almost like he was a different person. He was professional around me. It was almost like our relationship didn't ever happen. He didn't discuss personal business with me anymore. He never kept me beyond closing hours, and he always went on business trips alone. Or if he had to, he took the other assistant he hired after he got back with him. I thought that things were perfect that way. It gave me time to focus on building my family with Sam, although I couldn't get pregnant because I had my tubes tied years back. But Sam didn't know that, so we kept trying for a baby. But besides that, things went on really well between us. Our friends were always envious of our relationship. We had this deep understanding of each other, and we hardly ever fought, mostly because Sam ensured we sorted things out before the end of that day, and we told each other everything. Well, I told him everything except my darkest secret, one I knew would destroy our family if I ever did. But then things between Dan and I had ended, so I thought all I had to do was just take the secret to my grave. In fact, Dan's wife, whenever she came around, seemed to smile at me. Ever since I got married, she has become really nice to me. I guess I was no longer a threat to her after I got married, and it continued like that for 1.5 years after my marriage. Until Dan started again. He suddenly resumed buying me gifts, the exact type he got me when we started sleeping together. He was keeping me at work beyond work hours, and I started to spend less and less time with Sam. I really didn't want to accept the gifts he gave me, but each time he would guilt-trip me into taking them. "You know you owe me," were his usual words whenever he got me gifts and I tried refusing them. I didn't understand what he wanted anymore. For almost 2 years he pretended like he didn't see me, and I even knew he had another mistress during that period. I have had to send flowers and order gifts for her on his behalf. I think he thought of that as punishing me, but I was just really glad to be doing that. But then Dan turned back to me again, and I swear it, I tried to stop it from happening between us again. But Dan never gave me a choice. It was either I continued having sex with him or lost my job, and I didn't want to do that. I couldn't. Sam and I bought our house on a mortgage loan, and more than half of our money went into paying the loan back, while the rest were on the other things like feeding and other minor bills. So losing my job would mean cutting our income by nearly half, and we wouldn't finish paying the loan in the 6 months we budgeted for. And Dan knew this, because I told him about the new house, and he used it against me. So I had to accept Dan's offer. I was only going to sleep with him for the 6 months duration of the loan. I planned that I was going to end things with Dan completely after that, and leave his company to find another job. I had enough qualifications already thanks to him paying for my education. It was a perfect plan for me, one that I went over and over again in my head to check for loopholes. I thought that it would be as easy as it had been the last time. I successfully kept both relationships apart while I was still dating Sam, so I thought it would go the same way too this time. Except at that time, I didn't live with Sam. I could lie about work and get away with it. But working overnight and traveling far too often for work didn't sit well with Sam. We started to have issues because of it. One time, we had a huge fight over it, and I had been so upset, especially when Sam said the things that he did to me. I can hardly remember the exact words he said that day, but I remember him saying something about me being the only hardworking person in my godfather's company. He had implied that my relationship with Dan wasn't just what I told him that it was. And I remember leaving the house that day, and I didn't return until a week had passed. I spent the whole week with Dan, of course. We went on a trip, and I had so much fun. Dan kept telling me that I shouldn't have gotten married, if Sam was going to treat me that way. The way he pampered me excessively, buying me different expensive gifts, and making sure I was comfortable. It got rid of all the initial guilt I had for having an affair. I stopped caring what Sam would think about our relationship, and I just simply enjoyed myself. Even though Sam kept calling and trying to apologize for the things he said, I ignored his calls and only replied to a few of his texts. I told him I was on a work trip and that I was busy. When I got back home, Sam and I settled everything. I even swore to him without any guilt in my mind that nothing was going on between Dan and I, and Sam never mentioned anything after that day. The 6 months were finally over. We were done paying the mortgage and the house was officially ours. But I still continued my affair. Not because Dan found something else to blackmail me with, but because I loved the feeling I got from having so much money in my account. I loved how many places I got to be just because I was with Dan. Imagining myself without the luxurious things I got to have felt like a horror movie. Call me greedy. But it was the way I felt at that time. But apparently life had other plans for me, because I should have suspected that Sam was suspecting and watching me. I should have known that he started snooping through my phone, or that he paid someone to follow me around. But I didn't. I didn't know because I thought my lies were perfect, that it had no loopholes, and that I could really get away with everything I was doing. But Sam had known. For how long? I cannot even tell. I found out too late that he knew about my affair, and he was waiting, patiently, for me to mess up, so he could expose me. And I did. I messed up pretty badly, because how often Dan and I were spending on trips, and the gifts. Our work was lagging behind. We barely got any work done. Clients were leaving to other companies because of our low productivity. We were either dragging the work behind, or the client had canceled before we could get any done. And soon the company was in huge debts, because investors too were pulling out. Dan became really desperate for new partners. Without them, he wouldn't be able to pay the remaining workers, and the company would go bankrupt. So I suggested he hold a work event. The event would be a sort of connection. I told him to invite lots of people, especially the ones that could possibly invest in the company. And Dan accepted the idea. There was no money left, after paying the workers that month, to hold a work event like that. And Dan had already used the company as collateral for loans, so he pleaded with me to help him get the money. He promised to replace them once he got new investors, and I trusted him. So I sold more than half of the things he got me, gave him all the money that had been sitting pretty in my account, but it wasn't enough to plan the event we were planning for. So I took a huge loan from the bank in my name. I believed that once everything got sorted out, Dan would pay off everything. So I wasn't bothered. I didn't tell Sam anything, because I didn't want him to be suspicious. I didn't even know he knew at that point. We used up every fund to plan the biggest work event we've ever known. We invited a lot of potential investors and the old ones too. We wanted them to see what we had to offer. It was planned to be a 1+1 party, so I asked Sam to go with me. Sam had first claimed he would be busy on that day, but then 2 days before the event, he suddenly decided that he had time to spare. I was quite happy. I even loaned a dress from one of my friends, just so I could look amazing. Finally, the day came and everything started out pretty great, although Sam barely said more than 4 words to me throughout the drive there, and even at the party. He just kept sipping his drink and looking around. I thought he was just being grumpy, so I ignored him and paid attention to everyone else. I made sure that each table was served and everyone was feeling satisfied. Dan's wife and kids were also at the event. She had even hugged me when she saw me. Everything was going on perfectly well, until Dan called me to stay by his side. He wanted to introduce me to some of the new investors, but I was upset by the things he was saying. He kept boasting to people how he trained me to be his perfect assistant, and how he helped my parents who weren't financially stable. I couldn't believe he was using me to get people to think he was the good guy, even though I kept smiling through it all. He painted me as a poor girl he picked by the roadside, and from table to table as we went, he kept saying the same thing. Whenever he introduced me, I was able to pull away and go somewhere to cool off my anger, before I exploded right where I was. when something happened. We were close to the place I was supposed to sit with Sam. Dan wanted to introduce me yet again to another investor, the one he had been nervous throughout the week before about. He had told me that if we could get him to invest, that we didn't need the others at all. But as we got to his table, Dan put his hand around my waist comfortably. It was something he did very often, even years back, before we started our affair at all. He would put his hands around my waist and hold me against himself. And that day wasn't supposed to be any different. I didn't even think anything of it when he did it. I was still trying so hard to conceal my anger for the way he kept talking about me to people. I didn't expect the next thing that happened. Sam just totally lost it. He stood up angrily and smashed his wine glass on the floor. Everyone was shocked and looked at him, but he wasn't looking at them. He was looking at Dan and I. I tried to go to him and make it look like a drunken mistake, but Sam pushed me off himself and went to Dan. He held Dan's shirt and shouted at him, "You're a disgusting pig." Dan was confused and tried to reason with Sam, but Sam clearly was beyond that. He pushed him away and told everyone at the party Dan was having an affair with me. I was shocked that he said something like that. And I tried again to talk to Sam. I told him that what he was saying was ridiculous, that Dan was only my boss. But Sam just laughed and then forwarded something to the group chat, the same one I created for the event. I thought that it was a great idea to create a group where everyone could get the information they needed for the party, like the color code, the venue changes, and all the others. So everyone that was invited to the party was on that group chat, including Sam. And it was what he used to destroy me. He forwarded all the evidence he spent months gathering on Dan and I there. I remember how my heart had sunk when I saw the pictures on that group. There were pictures of us on our so-called work trips. There were the ones of us kissing. There was even a picture of both of us naked and in bed. Screenshots of our chats together were also there. There was nothing to deny, not with the evidence staring at us in the face, and certainly not with the way everyone there kept looking at both of us in disgust. Dan quickly started lying. "It's all her fault. She seduced me. I swear, she continued blackmailing me after the one-time mistake. She threatened to tell my wife." I was so angry, disgusted, and ashamed at the same time. I couldn't even bring myself to speak or defend myself. I didn't care that he was blaming everything on me. I cared more about Sam's reaction, and I tried to speak to him again, desperate to make him understand. But Sam just stepped away from me, and he left me there. Dan's wife came at me. She held my hair and kept cursing me, but I didn't care. Not anymore. I was literally watching my world slip away from me. Her insults didn't matter. Her kids dragged her away, but not before looking at me in disgust. Dan tried to follow his family, trying to explain his side of the story, his lies. And then gradually everyone left until it was me alone in that place. It was then I broke down. I cried so much because I was scared. I didn't know what to expect or what to do. I was scared to go home to Sam. It was obvious from his reaction that he hated me, and I was right. When I eventually summoned the courage to go home, with the intention to go plead my case, Sam was waiting for me, but he had his bags packed, and an envelope was on the table beside him. I immediately went to kneel at his feet. I begged him not to abandon me. I swore to him that I would become a faithful wife, and that I was going to do anything he asked of me, if he just forgave me. But Sam just looked at me. He watched me cry for minutes without saying anything, and just when I was starting to get my hopes up that he was reconsidering his decision, he threw the envelope at me. He told me that they contained divorce papers, and that he had signed his part already. "Even if you don't sign it, it doesn't mean anything to me. Our marriage has been over since the day I found out you were cheating." And then, as if the humiliation and disgrace he made sure I received in public wasn't enough, Sam told me that he had sold the house, and that I probably had about a week to find a new place. But it wasn't possible. The house was in both our names. I would have to sign away the house. But Sam laughed when I said that. He told me that the documents I signed a week ago had been it. I was so shocked when I realized it. The document that Sam told me were final formalities for the house. I hadn't read them because I trusted Sam, so I just signed them. After delivering that final blow, Sam left me kneeling there crying like a stupid person. He didn't even look back, and hasn't since he left. It's been a week since he left, and true to his words, a letter had come in just yesterday that I should evacuate the house. They wanted to start demolishing the house. Apparently, the new owner was planning to build a farm on the land. I don't know where to go or what to do. Sam had obviously changed his number because no matter how many times I tried, the calls never went through. I don't know where he stays or anything else. I have no idea what to do anymore. I really don't. Update. It's been 3 months now. 3 months since my life took an opposite detour down hell. Ever since Sam left, my life has never been the same. Every day just keeps getting worse. I didn't know that someone had that moment on record. The moment after Sam had revealed my affair to everyone there. And how Dan had frantically started lying and blaming me. How his wife had come at me. The person had recorded everything and posted it online. So everyone knows my secret. I'm being dragged so much on the internet, it's draining. Even here where I thought I could find solace. And perhaps get 1 or 2 persons who would understand why I did the things that I did. I've read your harsh and backlashing comments over and over again. And even though I feel hurt by everything you guys call me, I know that I deserve everything I have coming at me. I've been abandoned by everyone. My friends, they all blocked me off totally. They don't want to be associated with someone like me, so they're not tagged by my mistakes. My parents, they were the worst. They cut me off like I meant nothing to them. They didn't even try to listen to my side of the story. They just threw me out. My siblings wanted nothing to do with me either. They hate me too. None of them have picked my calls since that day, even though I had been the one paying their fees, the debts that I got because of Dan's event, hoping that I would get settled after that. Everything is now on me. I'm in a huge debt, one that I cannot possibly pay back in 2 years. Not with my current jobless state. No one is willing to employ someone like me. Once they recognized me as the same woman whose video trended, I was not even considered at all. I am now back to working different part-time jobs just to pay off the debts. I regret meeting Dan at all. I wish that I hadn't thought the wisest thing to do was sleeping with him. We are now both suffering from the choice that we made. Last I heard of him, his company folded up faster than it was supposed to, because even the old investors pulled out immediately, after that work event. And he's also in lots of debts too. His wife announced their divorce on social media, and his kids were apparently ignoring him too. I don't pity him though. The coward had tried to turn everything on me the minute we were discovered. I really miss Sam. I wish that I hadn't done any of the things that I did to hurt him. I miss the way he smiled and made me smile. His gentle approach to things. I miss his funny jokes. I miss the way he would make me dinner or breakfast depending on which one he had time for. I missed how often he reminded me of how much he loved me. I miss his touches and his kisses. I miss everything about him. The only thing left of him in my hands is his wedding ring. I remember that we had decided to have our names written on the inside of it. His name was written on mine and vice versa, but seeing the ring on his side of the bed after he left, it was really scary for me. I have never felt so alone before, and this feeling is the absolute worst. I keep remembering all of the things I did, my feelings at those times, and I keep wishing there's a way to go back in time and just smack some sense into myself. I wish I had really quit the job after I met Sam, and perhaps even told him everything. Maybe if I did, I wouldn't be in a situation like this. Sam would have probably asked me to quit. Then I would have been able to get another job. Perhaps one nicer with all the benefits too. Maybe I would have gone to untie my tubes too. So Sam and I could finally have the kids we've always talked about, thinking about the life I would have had if I hadn't been so stupid. It just makes my heart tighten in pain. Sometimes I wake up thinking that I would find Sam next to me, kissing me good morning. But every day since that day, I've woken up to an empty cold space beside me, a painful reminder of the horrible things I've done. I know that wishing won't get me anywhere. There's nothing I can do to change the past. Not anymore. I lost that opportunity with the choice I made, and now I'm meant to just accept the consequences that come with it. I know that no matter how hard I pray, Sam will never come back. He has moved on totally. I know because I stalk his social media page with a fake account. I know that if he knows it's me, he would block me off. So I just settled for knowing how he is now. And as painful as it is to me, Sam is doing perfectly fine without me. He got a promotion and a nice car and apartment too. I saw it from the pictures he posted. And the most painful thing of all would be the lady that appears almost everywhere in his pictures. And her comments too. Sam always reacts to each one of them. I've always known that Sam would move on without me. Perhaps meet someone new and even get married again. But the thought has always been dreadful. But seeing that lady all over his posts makes it so hard for me. The only thing that keeps me going now is that I haven't seen a relationship announcement or a wedding, because that will break me even further apart. And I don't think I can bear it. I know it's all my fault, and I won't ever stop regretting it. There's no moving past what I've done. There's no forgiving myself either. I'm stuck in this abyss of my own making, and it seems each day life keeps getting more reasons to punish me even further. I hope no one here ends up like me regardless of how much you hate me. Thanks and goodbye.